The DNA results arrived on the morning of my ex-wife's wedding. I wasn't there. I was sitting alone at a small table near the window of a quiet hotel room, watching steam rise from a paper cup of coffee that had already gone cold. My phone lit up face down, vibrating like something alive, something impatient. I didn't answer it. Not yet. I already knew what the call would sound like. Panic dressed up as politeness. Fear pretending to be control. 3 weeks earlier, I had smiled and signed the divorce papers. They had paid me $3 million to disappear, and everyone in that room believed the story was over. They were wrong. The night it all began, my wife Laura kissed my forehead the way she always did when she wanted to appear gentle without committing to closeness. Her lips were cool. Her perfume, something clean and expensive, hung in the air between us. "We're going to be fine, babe," she said softly. The dishwasher hummed behind her. The kitchen lights were too bright for that hour bouncing off the marble countertops we'd picked together years ago. I nodded because nodding was easier than asking questions I already knew the answers to. 5 minutes later, my phone rang. It was her mother. "Ethan," she said, too cheerful the way people sound when they're about to negotiate something ugly. "Can you come by the house? We need to talk tonight." Laura didn't ask who it was. She already knew. She just reached for her coat, her movements efficient, rehearsed. That was when I understood this wasn't a conversation. It was a script, and I had just missed the rehearsal. Her parents' house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac in a neighborhood where trees were trimmed weekly, and the neighbors waved without ever really looking at you. Inside, everything smelled faintly of lemon polish and money. Art on the walls that wasn't there to be enjoyed only displayed a low table already set with glasses we hadn't asked for. Her father sat rigid on the couch. Her mother stood by the fireplace, and beside them, as if summoned from central casting, was a man in a gray suit. I recognized immediately Mr. Halpern and the family attorney. "Let's be practical," her mother said before I'd even sat down. An envelope slid across the table toward me, thick, cream-colored. Inside it, a single page with a number printed so neatly it almost felt polite. "Trice $1 million for you to sign the divorce papers tonight." She continued as if explaining a warranty, "and move on with your life." Laura stood near the window, her back to me, staring out at the dark street like it had answers she didn't want to hear. I didn't ask why. I didn't ask how long. I didn't ask who. Because betrayal rarely arrives all at once. It comes in fragments. A password changed here. A late meeting there. A look that passes through you instead of landing on you. "What about the other part?" I asked calmly. Her mother tilted her head confused. "Other part?" "The truth?" I said. Silence. The kind that hums louder than conversation. Her father cleared his throat. "This is best for everyone." I looked at Laura. She didn't look back. That was the moment something inside me went quiet. Not broken, just quiet, like a room after the furniture's been removed. I smiled. "Congratulations," I said. Her mother frowned. "Excuse me?" "On the new chapter," I replied. "The baby, the wedding, the life you were so careful not to include me in." Laura finally turned. Her face tightened, not with guilt, but with irritation, as if I was making this harder than necessary. Mr. Halpern slid a folder toward me. Divorce papers, an NDA, a confidentiality clause wide enough to silence a lifetime. "Sign here," he said smoothly. "The funds will be transferred immediately." I picked up the pen, then paused. "I want this notarized," I said, "filed at the courthouse. And the wire transfer needs to be in my name tonight." Her mother smiled, relieved. She thought she'd won. Of course, she said. Whatever you need. They thought I was focused on the money. They didn't understand that money leaves footprints, and footprints tell stories. At the courthouse, the air smelled like old paper and cold air conditioning. People sat in rows holding folders, waiting for their lives to change quietly. I signed without shaking. Laura's hand trembled. Her mother signed like she was closing a real estate deal. The money hit my account before I left the building. I saved the receipt, screenshot, email, cloud backup, 3 places. Habit, not fear. When I got home that night, my home for the last time, I packed slowly, not out of heartbreak, out of clarity. At the bottom of a drawer beneath old insurance documents, I found a thin medical file, mine from years ago, a consult after a procedure Laura rarely remembered. Low probability of conception, the doctor had said then possible, but unlikely. Twins pit 3. I sat on the edge of the bed, the room smelling faintly of laundry detergent and something else I couldn't name. Maybe endings. My phone buzzed. A text from Laura. I hope you're okay. I didn't respond. Instead, I stared at the file in my hands and felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not rage, not grief. Focus. Because if she was pregnant with twins, then someone was lying. And I had just been paid to leave the room before the truth arrived. I didn't leave town because I was running. I left because distance makes patterns visible. 2 days after the courthouse, I checked into a hotel just off the interstate. One of those places designed to feel anonymous on purpose. Beige walls, muted art, the low, constant hum of an HVAC unit that never quite shuts off. I placed my suitcase by the bed, set my keys on the desk, and stood there for a long moment, hands on my hips, listening to the quiet. It was the first time in 23 years that no one expected anything from me. I poured myself a cup of coffee from the room's cheap machine. It tasted burnt and metallic, but I drank it anyway. Ritual mattered more than comfort. I opened my laptop and began doing what I had always done best. Organizing information. Divorce filing confirmed. Wire transfer confirmed. Notarized signatures scanned and saved. NDA highlighted. Annotated flagged. The confidentiality clause was aggressive. Too aggressive. It barred me from discussing any matter pertaining to the marriage, its dissolution, or any related personal, medical, or professional circumstances. That kind of language wasn't written to protect feelings. It was written to protect reputations. I forwarded the documents to Marcy, a paralegal I'd known since college. She wasn't my lawyer yet, but she had an eye for pressure disguised as choice. She called within minutes. They rushed you, she said. No greeting, just facts. That's not how amicable divorces look. They wanted it done fast, I replied. People only rush when they're afraid of something showing up late. I stared at the wall while she spoke. I signed anyway. I figured, she said, and that might have been the smartest move you could have made. That night I slept for 4 straight hours. It felt like hibernation. The next morning my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar email address. No greeting, just an automated header. Prenatal paternity test appointment confirmation. I read it twice. Date scheduled Wednesday, estimated results Friday, 10 a.m. I wasn't listed as the patient or the father, but my old email, one Laura and I had once shared for insurance, was still attached as an outdated emergency contact. They were in a hurry. I forwarded the email to Marcy without comment. Her response came back in all caps. Do not contact anyone. Save everything. I spent the afternoon walking aimlessly around the hotel parking lot. The asphalt shimmered in the heat. Cars came and went. Families passed through with suitcases and tired kids arguing softly about directions and dinner plans. Life continuing and different. On social media, Laura's family was anything but subtle. Photos of flower samples, venue walkthroughs, a caption that read, "New beginnings are beautiful things." I didn't feel jealous. I felt replaced, like a house that had been emptied, repainted, and relisted before the previous owner even found a new address. That evening, another message came in, a number I didn't recognize. Unknown. "You should know they're pushing the DNA results before the wedding on purpose." Me. Who is this unknown? Someone who doesn't like being told what to forget. I typed. Erase. Typed again. Me. Why? Tell me. 3 dots appeared then disappeared. No response. On Thursday, Marcy called again. "They're laying groundwork," she said. "NDA plus money plus speed. That's not closure, that's containment." "Can they undo it?" I asked. "The agreement," she paused. "If there's coercion or if material facts were hidden, especially medical ones." I thought of the file in my bag, the consult, the probabilities. "I have something," I said. "Don't tell me over the phone," she replied immediately. "Just hold it." That night, Laura finally called. Her name lit up my screen like muscle memory. I almost didn't answer. Almost. "Did you get there?" "Okay," she asked, voice thin-stretched. I did. Silence. I could hear something in the background. Music, laughter, planning. "I didn't want it to happen like this," she said. "No one ever does," I replied. "You didn't even fight." I let out a slow breath. "I didn't need to." She swallowed. I could hear it. "You're acting like you know something." "I know enough," I said. "Ethan, I'm not your enemy," I interrupted gently. "But I'm not your cover story either." She hung up. Friday morning arrived quietly, too quietly. I woke before my alarm, shower, dressed, and sat at the small table by the window. I set my phone face down beside my coffee, just like I'd imagined. At 9:58 a.m., my hands were steady. At 10:01, the phone vibrated once, then again. I didn't pick it up. At 10:02, it rang. This time I answered. "Ethan," her mother, said breathless, but trying to sound composed. "Are you somewhere private?" I closed my eyes. "Yes," I said, "I am." I didn't ask her what was wrong. I didn't need to. Her breathing told me everything. It came in shallow bursts like she was standing in a room that had suddenly grown too small. "There's been a complication," my mother-in-law said carefully, as if choosing the right word might still save her. I waited. "The results? They don't say what we expected." Behind her voice, I could hear movement, shoes on tile, a door opening and closing too hard, someone crying and trying to stop. "I see," I said. The silence on the other end stretched. She had expected anger, questions, bargaining. Instead, she got calm. "Did you know about the test?" she asked. Finally, I looked out the window at the parking lot below. A man loading suitcases into the trunk of a rental car. A woman holding a coffee cup with both hands like it was something fragile. "You were in such a hurry," I said evenly. "I assumed you'd handle the details." Her breath caught. "This isn't the time for that tone, Ethan." "No," I agreed. "It isn't." A new voice cut in sharply. "Greg's, Laura's boss, the groom-to-be. The lab screwed up," he said loud enough that I could hear him even when he wasn't holding the phone. "That's what they do sometimes. Tests fail." "They don't fail like this," I replied. "How would you know?" he snapped. "Because I wasn't the father, and neither were you," I thought. But I didn't say it. Instead, I said, "If you think it's wrong, Run it again. A sharp sound followed, something knocked over. A chair, maybe. Then Laura's voice cracking. "It's not wrong," she whispered. The line went dead. I didn't move for a long time after that. I just sat there listening to the hum of the room, the distant sound of traffic, the muted life happening everywhere else. Marcy called 10 minutes later. "They got the results," she said. "So I've heard. And it blew up." She exhaled slowly. "Good. That means they're scared." I rubbed my temples. "They're not done." "No," she agreed. "They're just switching tactics." That afternoon, I checked out of the hotel and drove south. Not home. Somewhere neutral. Somewhere with water and distance. A place where the horizon didn't end in other people's expectations. I booked a room near the coast. Nothing fancy. A small inn with creaky floors and salt in the air. The kind of place people go when they want to think without being watched. At night, I walked along the shore. The sand was cold under my shoes. The ocean moved the way it always had, unimpressed by human messes. My phone buzzed constantly. I didn't answer. Texts from Laura, missed calls from her father, a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize that left no message at all. On Saturday morning, I finally listened to one voicemail from Laura. "Please," she said, crying openly now. "This is worse than you think. They're all panicking. Greg is furious. My mom keeps saying we can fix this, but I don't know how. I didn't think it would come to this." I sat on the edge of the bed, the curtains fluttering slightly in the breeze. "I didn't think it would either," I said aloud, though she couldn't hear me. By noon, a new email arrived. Subject clarification regarding test results, body. There may have been an error in the chain of custody. Further review is underway. I forwarded it to Marcy. Her reply came back almost instantly. "They're trying to buy time. Don't give it to them." That evening, I got a call from a man named Daniel, a name I recognized faintly, one of the assistants at the medical group Laura's company partnered with. "I shouldn't be calling you," he said quietly, "and I can't say much, but someone very powerful pushed for that test to be rushed. Off the books, rushed." My grip tightened on the phone. "Who?" I asked. A pause then. "Not Greg." Ahem. The line went silent. Sunday morning, social media went dark. No more wedding posts. No more smiling captions. Silent, sudden, and total. That told me more than any confession could. By Sunday night, Marcy called again. "They're going to reach out soon," she said, "probably with another offer." "I'm not for sale," I replied. "I know, but they don't." Monday came with rain, the steady kind that makes everything feel heavier. I sat at a small cafe near the pier, nursing black coffee that tasted like burnt wood. At 7:43 a.m., an email appeared from unknown dot sender at secure mail subject. "You deserve the full truth." I stared at the screen. The body contained only one line. "The father isn't a stranger. It's someone who's been in the room the whole time." My stomach tightened, not in shock, but in recognition, like hearing a word you already knew but hadn't said out loud. A second message followed seconds later. "If you want proof, meet me tomorrow. 7 a.m. alone. I have the audio." I closed my laptop slowly. The waves outside crashed against the rocks below the cafe. Loud, final, unapologetic. For the first time since I'd signed those papers, I felt something shift. Not relief, not triumph, resolve. Because this wasn't about embarrassment or revenge anymore. This was about how far people were willing to go to keep the truth buried, and how loud it gets when it starts digging its way out. I arrived back in town the night before the wedding, not because I wanted to see them, because I wanted to be close enough to hear the truth when it finally broke. I checked into a small hotel near the courthouse, the same one I'd stayed in weeks earlier. Same beige walls, same humming air vent. It felt like stepping back into a pause scene. I set my phone on the desk, face up this time, plugged into the charger like a patient waiting for a monitor to beep. Sleep came in fragments. At 9:40 a.m., I was already awake, shower, dressed sitting in a chair by the window. Outside, the sky was clear and almost offensively blue. The kind of morning that promises happiness to people who still believe in it. I poured coffee and didn't drink it. At 9:58, my phone lit up with notifications I ignored. At 10:02, it rang. Laura's mother. I let it ring once more, then answered. Ethan, she said too quietly. Her voice had lost its polish. Thank God you're reachable. I leaned back in the chair. I always am. There was a pause, then noise flooded the line chair. Scraping voices, overlapping a sharp clatter like glass being set down too hard. You need to understand, she said, lowering her voice. This situation has escalated. Has it? I asked. Yes, said to the DNA results came back. I know. Another pause, longer this time. You knew her voice tightened around the word. You scheduled the test, I replied. I assumed you'd get the results. That's not what I meant, she snapped. Did you know they wouldn't match Greg? I closed my eyes. I knew enough not to be surprised. Her breath stuttered. I could hear it clearly now, panic creeping in where control used to live. Behind her, a man shouted, not angry, terrified. A raw sound that didn't belong in wedding halls or country clubs. Then Greg's voice burst through the line, sharp and desperate. This is insane, he said. They said the twins weren't mine. That's impossible, she swore. She didn't swear. Laura interrupted, her voice breaking completely. She avoided. That's different. I pictured the room without seeing it, the carefully arranged flowers, the unopened champagne, the guests beginning to arrive downstairs unaware that the story they'd been invited to celebrate was already collapsing. Greg, I said calmly, if the test says they're not yours, then yelling won't change that. You don't get to lecture me, he shouted. This is your mess. No, I corrected. This is your rush. Silence fell, suddenly heavy and unnatural. Then Laura spoke again, softer now. Ethan, please. I didn't respond. A new voice entered the call, measured, authoritative, unmistakably practiced. Mr. Walker, the man said, this is Halpern. Of course it was. I think we need to reset the tone here, he continued. Everyone is emotional. This isn't productive. You scheduled a prenatal DNA test days before a wedding, I replied. I'd say emotion is the least of your problems. That test was necessary, he said quickly. There were questions. Questions you were afraid to ask. Too late, I said. He inhaled sharply. A tiny sound, but I heard it. Laura sobbed somewhere in the background. This can still be handled discreetly, Halpern said. We prefer to keep your name out of whatever comes next. I smiled without humor. You paid me to disappear, I said. That was your discretion. Her mother jumped back in, voice shaking now. What do you want? There it was. Not apology, not truth. Price, I want you to stop calling, I said evenly. A thud echoed through the phone, someone hitting a table. That's it, Greg snapped. You walk away while we clean up your mess. I waited until the noise died down. Greg, I said quietly, if you think this ends with me, you haven't read the room. Laura's voice rose suddenly, wild and uncontrolled. I didn't do this alone. The line went dead silent. Then a sound cut through, clear, furious, unmistakable. A scream. Not Laura's. A man's. The kind of scream adults make when they realize the ground has disappeared beneath them. I didn't hear words after that, just chaos. Someone shouting Laura's name. Someone else telling people to turn the music off. The distant echo of a door slamming. Then Halpern again, his composure cracking just enough to matter. "Ethan," he said, lowering his voice, "this call didn't happen." "You should hang up," I replied. "You're not thinking clearly." The line went dead. I set the phone down gently, as if it were fragile. My hands weren't shaking. A minute later, an email notification appeared. Subject, update on prenatal paternity results. I didn't open it. Instead, I stared out the window at the parking lot below. Guests arriving. Valets opening doors. Life continuing to walk into a room where the truth was already screaming. My phone buzzed again. A text this time. Unknown number. Unknown. It's worse than you think. Unknown. The father isn't Greg. Unknown. And it isn't random. I typed one word. Mayui Sahur Nu. 3 dots appeared, paused, then disappeared. Another email arrived. Subject. You deserve to know who the father is. I leaned back in my chair and finally took a sip of my coffee. It was still cold. But for the first time in weeks, everything else felt sharp, focused, aligned. Because now I wasn't waiting for the truth. The truth was running toward me, and it was panicking. I didn't reply to the email right away, not because I was afraid of what it said, but because I understood what it meant. People don't send messages like that unless they're already losing control. I closed the laptop and sat there for a long moment, listening to the familiar hum of the hotel's air system. Somewhere nearby, an ice machine dumped cubes into a bin. Down the hall, a door opened and closed. Ordinary sounds, grounding sounds, the kind that remind you the world keeps moving, even when your life is being rearranged behind closed doors. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcy. "They're calling everyone," she said without preamble. "Your ex's parents, Greg, even people who shouldn't be involved. That usually means they're trying to find the leak." "There is one," I said, and he's scared." She was quiet for a beat. "That's good. Fear makes people sloppy." I forwarded her the email. No commentary. She called back within 30 seconds. "This isn't just an affair anymore," she said. "This is damage control. Someone with authority pushed things to move fast. DNA and DA, money timing. That's orchestration." "Halpern," I said. "I was hoping you wouldn't say that." So was I. By late afternoon, my phone rang again. Laura's father this time. I let it go to voicemail. "Ethan," his message said, voice strained. "We need to talk in person. This has gone too far." I smiled faintly. It had gone exactly far enough. I agreed to meet them the next morning on my terms. Not at their house, not at the club, at Halpern's office. Neutral ground, glass walls, conference table, somewhere where words like to echo. When I arrived, they were already seated. Laura sat stiffly at one end of the table, eyes red makeup carefully reapplied like armor. Her parents sat side by side, their posture tight, rehearsed. And at the head, as expected, was Halpern. Immaculate suit, calm expression, fingers steepled as if he were moderating a board meeting instead of a collapse. "Thank you for coming," he said smoothly. "I didn't come for you," I replied, taking a seat. "I came to listen." Laura looked up at me, then really looked. For the first time in weeks, she seemed to realize I wasn't here to be managed. Her mother spoke first. This has become complicated. It was complicated when you put money on the table, I said. Now it's just exposed. Halpern raised a hand gently. Let's stay constructive. You paid me $3 million to disappear, I said calmly, then rushed a prenatal DNA test before a wedding. That's not construction, that's containment. Her father bristled. You took the money. Yes, I agreed. And you left a trail. That got Halpern's attention. Just a flicker, barely visible, but I saw it. Laura's mother leaned forward. We can amend the agreement. Of course you can, I said. You always think you can. Halpern slid a folder toward me. An updated NDA, expanded compensation. We'd like to resolve this quietly. I didn't touch it. Instead, I reached into my bag and placed 3 things on the table, neatly aligned. The wire transfer receipt, the notarized divorce filing, a copy of the NDA with my annotations. Halpern's eyes dropped to the documents despite himself. You paid me, I said, my voice steady. You rushed me, and you tried to silence me. That's pressure, and pressure leaves fingerprints. Laura's father stood abruptly. This is absurd. No, I replied. What's absurd is thinking you could erase me without consequence. Halpern cleared his throat. Mr. Walker, we're trying to protect the family. I leaned back in my chair. From what? He didn't answer. That's when his phone vibrated on the table. He reached for it too quickly, turned it face down, but not before I saw the preview on the screen. I can't hold this anymore. He's going to tell everything. The room went very still. Laura's mother followed my gaze, her face drained of color. Halpern's composure slipped just a millimeter. Enough. You want to know what I want? I said quietly. No one spoke. I want you to stop pretending this is about me, I continued, because it isn't. It's about whoever's been hiding behind your authority. Halpern met my eyes. For the first time, there was no confidence there, only calculation. This conversation is over, he said sharply. No, I replied standing. It's just finally honest. As I reached the door, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text, unknown number. Tomorrow, 7 a.m., diner on Route 9. Come alone. I have the audio. I didn't turn back. Behind me, I heard Laura whisper my name. I kept walking because whatever they'd been protecting was bigger than a wedding, bigger than an affair, and someone inside their circle was about to break. The diner sat just off Route 9, tucked between a gas station and a car wash. The kind of place people only noticed when they needed coffee at an hour that felt too early to belong to anyone. The neon sign buzzed faintly, one letter flickering, like it was tired of pretending everything worked. Inside, the smell of bacon grease and burnt coffee wrapped around me the moment I pushed the door open. It was 6:58 a.m. I chose a booth near the wall, my back to the window, not because I was afraid, but because I didn't want to be distracted by movement. Truth requires attention. I ordered black coffee, no sugar, no cream. I needed the bitterness clean. At 7:03, a man slid into the seat across from me. Baseball cap pulled low, mask covering half his face, plain jacket, ordinary enough to disappear in a crowd, but his eyes kept darting to the door like it might accuse him of something. He didn't say my name, didn't greet me. He simply placed his phone on the table between us, face down, and pushed it toward me with 2 fingers. I can't stay long, he said quietly. I shouldn't even be here. Then why are you? I asked. His jaw tightened beneath the mask. Because I haven't slept since Friday. I didn't reach for the phone yet. I let him speak. People tell the truth more easily when they don't feel rushed. They told us it was urgent, he continued. Special handling, confidential, no paper trail beyond the minimum. I thought it was just rich people being rich. And then I asked, and then I realized who was calling the shots. My fingers brushed the edge of the phone. The screen was warm, like it had been held too tightly. Who? I said. He hesitated, then exhaled through his nose, sharp and controlled. Halpern. The name landed exactly where I expected it to. He came in himself, the man went on. Didn't send an assistant, didn't email. He stood there and smiled and told us this had to be done before the wedding. Said the family couldn't afford uncertainty. Said mistakes would be unfortunate. What kind of mistakes? I asked. He swallowed. The kind that get blamed on someone lower down. I nodded once. The audio. He unlocked the phone with shaking fingers and slid it back toward me. It's all there. I recorded it because I needed insurance. I pressed play. Halpern's voice filled the space between us, calm and cultured, the sound of a man used to closing rooms. You understand this needs to be settled before the ceremony, he said in the recording. There's too much at stake to let timing interfere. A woman's voice followed, strained, frightened. But the results, if they come back wrong, they won't help, replied smoothly. And if they do, we'll know how to interpret them. But he's not the father, the woman whispered. There was a pause, a breath. Don't be naive, Halpern said. The father is me, and you're not going to destroy a family over biology. My chest went cold, like someone had opened a window inside me. The audio ended. The diner felt louder suddenly. Forks clinking, coffee pouring, a truck rumbling past outside, normal sounds pressing in, unaware they were sharing space with something radioactive. I didn't react, not outwardly. Inside, something final settled into place. So, it wasn't just an affair, I said quietly. The man shook his head. It was a plan. I saved the file to my phone, then sent it to Marcy with one-word audio. Her response came back before I could lock the screen. Do not confront anyone. Come straight to me now. I looked up at the man across from me. You did the right thing. He gave a humorless laugh. I hope that's true. He stood quickly, dropped cash on the table, and disappeared out the door without looking back. I sat there for another minute, letting the coffee cool. When I stood, I didn't feel shaken. I felt precise. At Marcy's office, she listened to the recording twice. The first time, her face stayed neutral. The second time, she removed her glasses and leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. This changes everything, she said. Finally. I don't want a public spectacle, I replied. I don't want babies punished for adult decisions. She nodded. Then we do this clean, legally, permanently. She outlined it like a checklist. Fraud, coercion, abuse of authority, witness intimidation, enough leverage to make even powerful people rethink their confidence. My phone buzzed again. Laura. I didn't answer. Instead, I watched Marcy organize the evidence into folders, each labeled, each calm and deliberate. For the first time since that night in the kitchen, since the forehead kiss and the lie that followed, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction, control, because the truth wasn't something I had to shout. It was something I could place carefully on the table and let speak for itself. The final meeting didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened in a glass-walled conference room overlooking a parking lot that smelled faintly of hot asphalt and rain. No spectators, no raised voices, Just a long table, a pot of coffee no one touched, and the kind of silence that forms when everyone understands the stakes. Marcy sat beside me, posture relaxed, a yellow legal pad in front of her. Across the table were Laura's parents, stiff and pale, and Halpern still composed, but no longer untouchable. Laura arrived last. She looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, morally, like someone who had been holding up a collapsing structure with bare hands and finally let go. "We're here to resolve this, Halpern," began his tone practiced without unnecessary exposure. Marcy didn't respond. She slid a folder to the center of the table and opened it to a single page, the transcript of the audio. Not the whole thing, just enough. Halpern's eyes moved across the words. His jaw tightened once. He closed the folder himself. "This won't end well," he said quietly. I met his gaze. Truth rarely does for the people who rely on silence. Laura's mother leaned forward, hands clasped too tightly. "What do you want?" There it was again. The same question, the same assumption. "I don't want more money," I said. "I don't want a public apology, and I don't want to negotiate my dignity." Her father scoffed weakly. "Then why are we here?" I took a breath, slow, measured, the way I'd learned to do when meetings mattered. "Three things," I said, lifting three fingers. "First, you retract every statement, formal or informal, that painted me as opportunistic, vindictive, or bought. I will not be recast as the villain to protect your image." Laura swallowed. She nodded faintly. "Second, what's mine comes back to me, not as a favor, as acknowledgement. Assets I contributed to accounts I built. No ND as that implied guilt where there was none." Halpern shifted in his chair. Marcy wrote something down without looking up. "And third," I continued, "you handle the consequences of this fully and honestly for the children. Not behind closed doors. Not with scapegoats, with responsibility." Laura's mother shook her head, voice breaking. "You can't expect us to." "I can," I interrupted gently, "because if you don't, the next version of this conversation won't be private." The room went still. Halpern leaned back, eyes narrowed, calculating exits. "You'd expose everything." "I'd expose the truth," I said. "There's a difference." Laura finally spoke. "I didn't think it would go this far." I looked at her for a long moment. "It always does," I said, "when people keep choosing the easy lie." She lowered her eyes. The agreement that followed wasn't dramatic. It was meticulous. Language revised, clauses removed, acknowledgments added. The NDA rewritten to protect privacy, not reputations built on manipulation. Halpern signed last, his pen, pressing harder than necessary. When it was over, no one celebrated. I stood, gathered my coat, and turned to Laura. She opened her mouth as if to say something. An apology, maybe a memory. I shook my head once, not cruelly, just clearly. "You don't need to say anything," I told her. "You already did when you let them speak for you." Outside, the air was cool and clean. It had rained recently, and the pavement reflected the sky like a second chance. I walked to my car and sat there for a minute, hands on the wheel, breathing. The following morning, I took a walk along the water, early, quiet. Older couples passed me, moving slowly, comfortable in their silence. I bought a coffee from a small stand and watched the horizon brighten. I didn't feel victorious. I felt unburdened. Back home, I changed the locks, deleted old contacts, filed documents into a drawer labeled closed. When Laura's name appeared on my phone one last time, I didn't hesitate. I deleted it. Some endings don't need fireworks. They need air. If you've stayed with me this far, I want to ask you something honestly. If you had been in my place, would you have signed and walked away, or would you have fought from the very first minute? Tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I read them. I really do. And if stories like this, quiet, just as hard truths and endings that let you breathe matter to you, consider subscribing. We share them every day, and your presence means more than you know. Let's keep walking this road together.